Okay, so we kind of know what gluten is now. Here's basically just a comprehensive list of a bunch of things that have gluten in it, just to give you an idea. The ones that are most important in terms of the restaurant industry are barley, oats, soy sauce, and malt vinegar. And these are some of the ingredients that just trip up gluten-free people the most. So we just learned that about 0.015 milligrams is enough to cause a reaction. And so just to give you an idea, so this is a slice of bread about this big. And this is, the circled is 1/100th of a slice of bread. And 1/100th is 50 milligrams. So we're talking about like thousands of times smaller than that, smaller than a crumb from a piece of bread, that can cause a reaction, which is why the idea of cross-contamination is pretty important when it comes to trying to serve gluten-free food at a restaurant. Another reason that it's becoming a big deal is because it's pretty high in demand. So you not only have celiacs, you have gluten-intolerant people, you have wheat allergy people. A lot of people who have autism or ADHD are treated with a gluten-free diet. It's also a fad diet right now, and it's also linked to many other diseases like multiple sclerosis. Sometimes people ask you to go on a gluten-free diet. A lot of people treat rheumatoid arthritis with a gluten-free diet. So everyone is telling everyone to be gluten-free all the time. So what are the restaurant challenges? The challenge has to do with storage, preparation, food service, and customer service. And we'll go through each one of these things and talk about things that you might want to talk about during your presentation to these restaurants. So the first issue is bulk storage. The thing about gluten is that, especially with dry flour, it can remain airborne for 48 hours after using it, which means if someone has celiac disease and you work in a pizza cookery, a celiac really should not walk back in the kitchen. They'll die. No, I'm just kidding. They'll inhale gluten, and it's really bad because the way your lungs work is when there's stuff in your lungs that can't dissolve into liquid, you essentially cough it up and swallow it, and then you digest it. Thus, if you breathe in gluten, you will eventually be digesting that gluten. So how do you protect your food? And so what you can do is you can suggest to restaurants to buy colorful duct tape, so when they get a gluten-free flour, they can just put red duct tape over the bag so that everyone knows that it's gluten-free and people don't get it confused, because white powdery flour, they all look the same. Like gluten-free flour looks like gluten flour. It's white powder. Like there's no real difference. Or you can invest in a label gun, which a lot of restaurants probably already have. And so they can label their products as gluten-free. And the next thing is using the duct tape to have designated areas. So you can put down a piece of tape on your counter to have one designated area that's for gluten-free food preparation. So, food preparation. Now that you've stored your food safely, how do you prepare it? There's a lot of problems when it comes to food preparation in terms of cross-contamination. So you have things like knives, ladles, cutting boards, and strainers that all need to be designated items for a gluten-free restaurant. GFF stands for gluten-free friendly. It's not a real acronym, but I'm working on getting it into our, Anyways, so GFF restaurants need to have designated tools. So if you're at a pizza place and you have a gluten-free pizza, you need to have a designated pizza cutter in order to prevent cross-contamination. In terms of knives, if you're at a sandwich place and you use gluten-free bread, but then use the same knife that you use to cut gluten bread, that's a huge problem. One thing with ladles and spoons is that if you have wooden utensils, that's not going to work because they're porous, which means even if you clean them, they're probably going to still have some type of gluten either that is absorbed into the wood that can lead to trace amounts of gluten in gluten-free food. And then strainers. So a lot of restaurants offer gluten-free pasta because that's pretty easy to do, but then they don't think about the little things like, for example, once you cook the pasta, then you strain it with a strainer that has been used for like spaghetti throughout the entire night. So that's a huge problem. So you really need to have designated tools. And not only do you need to have tools, but you need to have something that marks them as designated. So a lot of training companies will give pizza companies a gluten-free pizza cutter with a green handle. And so, you know that the cutter with the green handle is designated. So you need some way to mark that some utensils are gluten-free and some aren't. This is my knife, like in real life, so it's gluten-free. Okay, appliances. Restaurant appliances are a big problem. So you might think that French fries are gluten-free, and they are. Potatoes, like what could go wrong? The problem is that they're fried in the same oil as, say, onion rings. What else is breaded? What usually? Oh, beer battered things. You fry fried chicken, like also anything you can put in a fryer, hot dogs, corn dogs, whatever. If they share that oil, that's a huge problem because that means that these French fries now contain at least trace amounts of gluten, probably more than trace, probably pretty significant levels of gluten. The other thing is if you go to a place like a diner or any type of breakfast place where they cook things on a griddle, that's a huge problem because people cook pancakes, eggs, and potatoes all on the same surface. And also with grills, a lot of times people will cook hamburger patties and also grill the buns that the burgers go on. Even just to warm them up, it still leads to cross-contamination. So here's a picture of a griddle. And granted, this place divides it, but there's still a chance for cross-contamination. A lot of places don't even have different sections for foods. They just kind of, wherever there's room, they cook it because diners are usually pretty busy. And then these are burger buns on a grill. Protective gear. Another thing you want to advise restaurants if they want to have a gluten-free product is that they need to have protective gear. So that means if you're going to be handling a gluten-free product, you should probably put on latex gloves for a couple of reasons. Not just to help with cross-contamination, but to encourage a kind of mindfulness. So if you go to, if you have to put on these gloves and you're wearing awkward latex gloves that you never wear during the normal workday, it kind of keeps you thinking like, oh yeah, why am I using these gloves? Maybe I won't handle this gluten product while I'm in the middle of preparing this gluten-free product. That's why I'm wearing these gloves. You also need a designated oven mitt, especially if you're at a place like a pizzeria. So I found this online. I didn't actually make this image, but you get the idea. You get stains and you get at least trace amounts of gluten on your oven mitts. If you pick up a pizza and kind of get your thumb into the pizza and then take out a gluten-free one and also touch it, now there's cross-contamination. And it sounds minor, but as we learned, it only takes 5 parts per million for someone to have a reaction. So food service. Food service has to do with, it's not just preparation. So preparation is more like preparing ingredients and stuff, and food service is really putting the plate together. Preparation process in the food service, there are a lot of opportunities for mishaps. So when you order, typically the customer orders to the server tells the chef tells the kitchen staff prepares it, then the server comes back, picks up the food, and brings it to the table. And sometimes it's not even the server who delivers the food, it's a busboy or something along those lines. So there are a lot of people involved, a lot of chain of events. And so that means that there is a lot of opportunity for mistakes. One way to solve this problem is basically what P.F. Chang's does is they have designated gluten-free plates, which means that no matter where we are in the chain of command, no matter who's handling the food, they know it's on a gluten-free plate, which means they know it's gluten-free. So even if someone didn't tell them that this service or this entree was supposed to be gluten-free, they know it. And what's funny is that I actually didn't know that P.F. Chang's had 2 different types of plates because every time I go, it's gluten-free, and people always order gluten-free around me to not, make it awkward. So I didn't even know they had gluten-free plates until I went with a random and they ordered normal food. So anyways, it's a really, really clever solution. Another thing you can do, so I can see, like, if you're training a restaurant and they are like, bro, I'm not going to buy a bunch of plates. That's not happening. What they can do is, those little toothpicks that you put in sandwiches that have those, like, frilly things on top? They can do that. There's a restaurant in LA that when something's gluten-free or allergy-free, they use the different colors to codes for different allergens, which is pretty sophisticated, but, you can just pick one. If it has a frilly thing, it means the customer is complicated. You need to designate kitchen areas, and also you need to educate the entire staff, because again, it's not just about whether or not the head chef knows what gluten is. It's about whether or not your server knows, whether the manager knows, and whether the kitchen staff know, because a lot of people handle food. So overlooking the problem, here are some things that you might want to address if you decide to train a restaurant in gluten-free, friendly food preparation. So some food preparations actually result in the contamination, which is a problem because when a manager says, hey chef, is this gluten-free? The chef will think to himself, yeah, like, what's in this? It's just broccoli, so broccoli is totally fine. Why would that not be gluten-free? But they might not think about the preparation process. So at the Old Spaghetti Factory, they have a gluten-free menu, and broccoli isn't on that menu. And the reason broccoli isn't on that menu is because they cook their broccoli in pasta water, which is totally weird. I don't know why they do it. It might be like they're being green or something. But if you didn't know that, or if you didn't think about that, and a gluten-free person ordered broccoli, that'd be a huge problem. Another example is Filippo's on College Avenue. They have gluten-free gnocchi, but it took them a long time to figure out that they couldn't. So Italian restaurants use one big pot of boiling water to cook all the pasta, and then they scoop it out with a strainer. So it's not to waste water. Things are fast. You always have boiling water going. That doesn't work when someone orders a gluten-free pasta. They use that exact same water and the exact same strainer, and but they don't do that anymore because a student went there and said something about it. I actually only found out because there was a green fettuccine noodle, like half of a noodle, in my plate, and I was like, whoa, no, bro. But anyway, so now they don't do that anymore. But that's just an example of how, like, something itself, like, in essence, might be gluten-free, but the food process, the preparation process makes it not gluten-free. So also restaurants that use pre-packaged foods are sometimes problematic because they don't read the ingredients on their packaged foods. So if you go to a restaurant that's kind of like a deli, so this example is Grapevine, they order french fries. They don't make them, shocker, I know, they do not make them fresh on site. What they do is they order frozen french fries. And they might not read their packaging. So Grapevine actually has beer-battered french fries, but they don't advertise them as beer-battered. So they have a designated fryer. Their frying oil is not contaminated, but their fries aren't gluten-free. So they have a designated fryer for no reason. Which is kind of funny. It's just inefficient. It's weird. Another example is a lot of diners use, what they do is they cook a ton of bacon at once, and then they put it in like a metal pan under hot lamps, and they put bread in the bottom and put the bacon on top of the bread to absorb the oil from the bacon, so it's not as like greasy and oily when it gets to you. But if you're someone with celiac or gluten intolerance, that's going to be a huge problem because you have like bread-soaked bacon. Okay, so this is a game. This is an actual menu from Chili's, and I was just wondering, like, if any of these things are gluten-free. Like, what do people think?
Where's that?
Oh, okay. Ignore the top one, because that's just, you pick 3. So this is Southwestern egg rolls, and I guess it's kind of a giveaway. It says crispy flour tortilla. And these are fajita nachos, which are corn nachos with cheese, beans, jalapenos, pico de gallo, sour cream, peppers, grilled onions, steak or chicken. Do you guys think that's gluten-free? How many think yes? Like, how many of you, if you're gluten-free, would order this? Why not then? You can't, like,
They wouldn't
you
order
have to pick.
anything ever.
That's true. You wouldn't go to Chili's, but if you did,
They have a gluten menu.
they do. They have a gluten-free menu. But anyways, what do you guys think? Okay, no one. I'll just talk then. So the nachos actually are not gluten-free for a couple of reasons. First is with chips, even if they're corn chips, they'll fry them, and then they might sprinkle them with flour so that they don't stick together. Another problem. So that's one problem. The other thing is that they're probably fried in the same fryer that they use for the egg rolls, which are a flour tortilla. And then if you see here, other things on the menu, you have fried cheese, which is breaded cheese cooked in a fryer, which means that the Texas French fries are not going to be gluten-free because they're all going to be using, you can ask them if they have a designated fryer. I know that they don't, but anyways, you could ask. And if they said yes, you'd be fine, but if they say no, like, anyways, you'll see. So these are little gluten bombs, and then they, like, bomb the fries. Okay. So anyways, it just shows you that, like, even if a menu item is gluten-free, the non-gluten items on the menus can impact whether or not what you're thinking that you can order is actually gluten-free.